Hey everyone, welcome back to Always Broken. Today we're going to be taking a look at an error I got on my 2017 Tesla Model X. I was driving across the state for the holidays. I had a trip planned to a destination charger and it ended up dying before I got there. So I think it was just a miscalculation in the computer, or the battery's degraded worse than it thinks it has. And I ended up coming to a complete stop with the car off about 0.2 miles away from the supercharger, and that was a whole debacle, but we won't get into that. But since then, it took a charge just fine at that supercharger, but I now have an error on the dash saying that the low voltage battery needs to be replaced. So I'm going to show you what that looks like right here. So here's on the dashboard right now, you can see down at the bottom, it says, schedule service to replace low voltage battery. Software will not update until the battery is replaced. The car has been working just fine. It's taking a charge. Battery seems healthy, other than not making it to our destination. And so I'm going to show you how to reset the low voltage battery in order to see if it can just be reset rather than replacing the low voltage battery itself. I think it costs $350 or somewhere around there to have it done at Tesla. So to go ahead and get started, we're going to first remove the charge port out here. Just make sure we don't have any power coming in. The next thing we're going to do is turn the car off. Now before you do this step, you want to make sure you have a door open and you want to have the front trunk or frunk popped. So I'll go ahead and pop that. And then what you want to do is go to safety, and then right here you'll hit power off. It'll ask you if you are sure you want to turn the power off, and I'll go ahead and confirm that. So now the car is shutting down, and we will go up front to access the low voltage battery. Everything will still be functional right now as long as the low voltage battery is still connected, but this is why you want to make sure you leave your door open so that you don't get yourself locked out. So the first thing you got to do is remove this upper cover. These just have little tabs that kind of push down, and it can be caught underneath this seal a little bit. I've seen people pull them up pretty aggressively, but you can end up losing the clips that are underneath. I'll show you what those look like. So they're these little rounded clips, and actually my car is missing one right here. So we'll set this aside. Now on the left side, if you're facing the car from the front, you'll notice this little loop here. This is the first responders loop. In the event that there was an accident or a fire, the first responders would come, and I believe they are trained to look for this loop, and if they snip it with cutters, then it opens the contactors and pulls the power from the high voltage battery. So we will be taking advantage of the fact that that has a little plug there that we can remove rather than cutting the wire itself. And then the other thing we're going to have to do is get down to the low voltage battery, which is kind of back down here in this area, and it's already tricky to get to. Okay, after you pull that top tray piece out, the next thing to do is to take this weather stripping and just grab underneath somewhere and pull it up, and then you can pull it up kind of all the way around and set that aside. Now what we'll want to do is make sure to unplug the dome lights that are in here, and this is done simply by pushing down on a little tab right here on this edge. So if you can push that down, get a better angle here, push that down to your fingernail, and then you can slide the clip out. Same thing over here. Can't quite see it, but you push down right here, slide it out. Okay, Now you can go ahead and just lift up this carpet liner. And set that aside. Now that we got the liner out, you can see there's several fasteners around the perimeter of this tray. And they're all 10 millimeter, so we will go ahead and remove those now. So these are all the same length, so it doesn't really matter where they go. You just want to make sure you account for all of them. I'll go ahead and pick those all up now and set them aside so we can take the tray out. Then you need to take off the plastics that surround. They come off the same way as the cover back there did. They just lift up with these little kind of sort of ball socket clips. So go ahead and lift that one up and out. You can pull it by the strut. Lift this one up and out. And then the front one. Okay, so now the tray here should be able to come up and out. Don't forget we've got these wires here. We don't want to kind of tear or anything, so make sure to tuck them back through this little hole. And then carefully work the tray up and out. So now that the tray has been taken out of the way, we can remove this air filter inlet. If this car had the biodefense filter, as they call it, there would be a large HEPA filter in this area. And I believe it can just be added, but currently do not have that. So this piece here kind of lifts up from the bottom and then just pulls straight forward, and that can come up and out. And so here is the low voltage battery. It's kind of like your standard car battery, a little smaller. And what we need to do here is remove the ground. And when we do that, the car will be completely off. And hopefully that resets it. If not, we would do the same procedure and remove this battery by undoing the positive and then undoing this bracket back here that's got this little hold down, and then you can take the whole battery out and replace it if you wanted to do that yourself. So I'll grab a wrench and we'll take this ground off. Now, when you're working on batteries, it's always a good idea to make sure that your positive stays covered, because any metallic part in the car is potentially grounded to the negative side of the battery. So we got a cover here so we're safe, but say we had left this negative side on and you were using the wrench over here and you were to touch something, you could potentially short out the battery. All right, I'm going to use a 10 millimeter open end wrench to remove this clamp on the side. Okay, this is loose. It could spark a little, but if you go fast, it usually is okay. We'll go ahead and wiggle that off of there. They recommend kind of leaving this unplugged for about 30 seconds. And while we're doing that, I'm going to take the opportunity to just measure the voltage on this battery. Set my meter to DC volts. We'll go ahead and measure across. So it's at 14.08 volts, which should be more than adequate. That kind of tells me that we don't have, you know, a bad cell in there or something that would prevent this battery from working. I think what happens is if the car sees low voltage on this battery, like in the case where I ran out of battery altogether, it flags that alert and it doesn't automatically clear. So the only way to clear it is to do this. Okay, so now that we have the negative terminal disconnected, we want to come over here to the first responders loop, and we'll just unplug this connector right here. So you push down on this tab and slide the connector off. So now that everything's disconnected, we're fully powered off, and we'll wait 30 seconds before we start plugging anything back in. And I'll take this opportunity to kind of clean up down here a little bit and clean up the plastic pieces that I've removed so far. Alright, I've vacuumed up a little bit, certainly not a thorough job, just try to get some of the dust out of there. And the first thing we're going to do is plug this first responders loop back in. You can see it's got a little hook right here, and then the clip that we push down, you want to make sure those are on the same side. Kind of push it together and squeeze it until it clicks. Then we'll come over here and put the ground cable back on. Again, sometimes it can spark a little bit as it, you know, is charging all the little capacitors and boards back up quickly, but if you go fast, it usually sparks less. It's not anything to be worried about. It shouldn't hurt you. Okay. So make sure that's on there good, and let me grab my wrench. Kind of wiggle it back and forth, make sure it's at least below the surface of that terminal. Try and keep it parallel or how the cables want to be routed, and then we can go ahead and tighten this nut down. And with the ground, you don't have to worry about your wrench touching any of the frame of the car, but you do not want it to touch the positive terminal or anything that these red cables are connected to. You know, there's a little metal back there and whatnot. So you want to make sure you're not touching anything. There's actually some positive terminals up here behind this fuse cover too. So, you know, we just want to be careful that we're not hitting the wrench on anything that could potentially short out the battery. So this doesn't have to be too snug. You want it firm, but you don't have to go crazy like you're tightening a wheel lug. You know, just snug until this doesn't move. Okay, so that's all put back together. I think the next thing we'll do is go inside and see if it cleared the alert. Okay, we're back inside. It says car off. I'll go ahead and put my foot on the brake. Takes a few seconds for it to boot up. Calibration needed. Hold button to close door until the calibration is complete. Okay. I'm holding it. It's doing something with all of the doors right now. Okay, now it says calibration complete. So I'll let go of that. Nose at the front is still open. And now it appears that the car is turning back on. Front trunk open. Yes, I know that. Let's move it a little bit. Drive it back forward a little bit. Put it back into park. Look at that. Looks like the error has cleared and no longer tells me I need to replace the low voltage battery. So I think that takes care of it. Okay, I got the air inlet cleaned up a little bit. Not perfect, but good enough. We will put this back in there. It looks like you sort of start at the top and fit this ductwork into the inlet here. Sort of push back and then it drops down. Okay, next we will put the tray in. Again, make sure you don't damage these wires. They come out the bottom here, but we'll feed them back through this little opening. Just like that. We can see down here that our holes are lined up, which means this tray is pretty close to the right place and should go in once we start putting the screws in. Okay, the next step is to put all of these 10mm screws in. They are all the same length, so you don't have to worry about which one goes where. I'm going to go start them all by hand to make sure everything lines up first, and that way we don't, kind of over constrain something by tightening it too early in one spot. Okay, all the fasteners are started. Looks like they all went in relatively well, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten them up. A lot of people like to use impact wrenches or guns for doing tightening, but I don't like that you can't trust how much torque you're putting into it, especially with this being made of plastic. So I'm just going to tighten them by hand with a quarter drive and a 10mm socket. Okay, so I started with all the ones on the bottom of the tray first to make sure it's sort of like sucked down to the frame rails that it rests on, and now I'll start probably work my way from the middle out both sides. Okay, I'll go around once more, make sure I didn't miss any of them, and then we'll put the carpet in. That just drops in there. Make sure to reattach the light wires. Push it until it clicks. Same thing on this side. Just push it until it clicks. And there we go. I think we just want to tuck the wire kind of back in this hole. And let the carpet rest. Okay, next we'll start putting the trim pieces back on. Start with the front one here. Alright, so you just kind of orient it with the slot facing back. We have all these clips. So it looks like there's 6 on that side, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So a total of 12 clips that are going to get brought in. You can sort of line it up on this peg and the slot right here. Same thing over here, this peg and this slot right here. Work your way middle out. Okay, then we'll put the side trim on next. Okay, we'll put this other side trim piece on. You gotta slot this around the gas strut that holds the hood up. Again, you got a pin here that goes into that slot, and then another pin back here that goes into the slot on this tray. Those are the locating features. There we go, spiking a little bit. Next we'll put the trim on this side. Again, we got some locating pins here and here. Make sure not to pinch this rubber hose. I'm going to kind of tuck it down and out of the way. This is for the window washer fluid. Seemed like what was hanging me up on the other side was this pin right here. You kind of had to manipulate it so that it was at the right angle to go into this piece. That was much easier on this side. Okay, lastly we just have the piece that goes on the back here and covers this little area. Okay, the last thing we got to put on is the weather stripping. The easiest way is to lay the weather stripping out kind of in the orientation it would go, and it already sort of has these corners kind of shaped into it just from kind of sitting in that shape for so many years. But the easiest way to tell which way it goes is there's a little seam right here, and this goes dead center on the back. So we'll start here and work our way in both directions so that we don't end up with a bunched up section once we get to the end. So the easiest way to do it is to fit this kind of groove right here, this clip, over the plastic. Let's see if you can see that. Like this. And then this lip that my thumb is on goes over the carpet. So go ahead and work your way around. Come back over here, work this side. Kind of helps if you have your thumb underneath as you slide it along, and you'll feel when it's getting pushed down or if it's binding up and not letting it go down. I fit it all the way around. Everything fits nicely, and I check to make sure that the carpet is underneath this lip by going all the way around. The corners will bunch up like this. This is normal. That's how it comes, just because it's going around the radius here. Thanks for watching this time on Always Broken, and we'll see you on the next one.